Welcome to Soul Rising. We're your hosts, Amy and Erin. We're two everyday mediums who are passionate about taking the woo-woo out of spirituality and bringing it down to earth. So put the kettle on, grab a chair, and join us.
Hey everyone, welcome to Soul Rising.
Welcome back. What is this, Amy? Episode what, 35?
35.
35. All right. That's a good number.
That's a good number. It's getting
I don't know if people saw, but we started this video and I was like mid-laugh because Amy and I were basically talking about the podcast and we're like, oh, wait a second. We should record this. We should start recording
right now, but like it was like recordable content, right?
Yeah. We're like, oh, wait. We got to talk about this on the podcast.
Yeah. We were just kind of sharing about, like, for me personally, I have this tendency to overcomplicate everything or overthink things, right?
Guilty.
Right. I think a lot of us are like this. So I was given an example of like when I was younger and like, I can't understand certain math, right? Like I just can't get it. I'm just not good at math. And then I had that mindset. And then it just took like one person to say it a certain way. And I got it. And I thought, that's it. Like I got that, but I didn't think it was the right answer because it was too easy to get to. Right. So there's this tendency to like overcomplicate everything.
Overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
It's like me, I'm trying to learn data collection and graphing because of this other, career path that I've chosen.
Yeah.
And everybody's explaining how to do this one graph. And I'm like, I don't understand because I'm overcomplicated in my head. And then somebody just said something to me and I was like, that's it. Yeah. What did you think?
I know. I am embarrassed with that. I bet that's a common thing. I think.
I think so.
And we were kind of talking about, in general, like our new focus with the podcast, but also like in our own business and the content we put out is about getting back to that beginner's mindset, right? Mm-hmm. Because I feel like it really goes hand in hand to some of the work I've been doing lately, the higher self readings that I've been doing and kind of shining a light on people's soul gifts, right? And what I was saying about this is these are not things that should be like overly surprising to you. They shouldn't sound foreign. Like there shouldn't be any surprises in this reading because this is like you underneath it all, your essence. And so sometimes we're so close to what we're gifted at because we just think, well, that's just me and part of me. And because it comes maybe easy to us, certain things, we think that that's just easy for everyone or everybody's good at that.
Yes.
And so we kind of miss the opportunity to really shine and embody the gift because we don't realize it's a gift. And so the reason that relates to this information is because, sometimes the things that I want to post about, I kind of almost get in this like perfectionist mode where I'm like, I have to say it this way, or I have to give more information, or I have to do this. And so then I like stall my process or my progress from putting it out there. And then I look at some other people's content, like, like really big names that have like 1 million Instagram followers. And I look at their content and I'm like, it's so simple. Like it's simple truths.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we need to stop overcomplicating everything. Like just because we might know something doesn't mean that somebody else does.
Yes.
I think it's kind of like we're aware of this. We're like working with it. And I feel like maybe the path of our podcast will kind of get back into that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like when you're talking to somebody or I always give the example of like when I had, when I was in one of my therapy sessions and my therapist was saying something about boundaries to me and was like, well, if your body is saying this, if you're uncomfortable, that's your body's way of telling you like your boundaries have been crossed. And a light bulb just went off for me. And I was like, of course.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. So I'm sure if people listening to the podcast or, it does not even just in the podcast, but in life, you're having these conversations with friends and somebody says something and you're like, oh, I didn't see it that way. Or like you just said it in a totally new light. And now I'm there with you. Like, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because sometimes it takes a certain person to say something in a certain way, you know, like, yeah. And so what I'm hearing as we're saying that is encouragement for us, but also for our listeners to like, don't hold yourself back. Like, don't censor what you feel like intuitively you want to say, because you think somebody might already know it. Or you might think like, well, if I tell them this, they might think that I think that they don't know it. Right. Which implies that they're like, I don't know, dumb or something. Right. But more often than not, no, you feel like you should say something because you're meant to say something.
And that gets into a whole, like, just trust, confidence in yourself. And I mean, my whole, it's so funny. I was like thinking about this the other day. I was going to say while in the bathroom, but like our listeners don't need to know that. And I didn't need to say it, but I said it, you guys. Okay. I said it. That's where I do my best thinking, in the bathroom.
Well, me too, but it's in the tub.
Okay. See, if I had a tub.
Yeah. You'd go in there.
I would go.
Yeah. I always say I'm birthing my brain babies. I'm like, my husband will be like, where are you going? I'm going in the tub to birth my brain babies. Cause that is where the water is like some sort of like, it helps the channel.
It's a channel.
It is. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay. That's what I'm going to do. Right. It's a thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing. And I was sitting on the toilet and I, sorry guys, TMI. And I was thinking, of something years ago, somebody said to me about my mediumship, was like, just be confident. Like you're already getting great validation, right? You already know that in some way, something that you're going to say is going to resonate in some form or another. So just say whatever comes through. And that's why I always tell people, I'm just going to say it. It might not make sense to you, but I got to give it to you. And then today, just when I was had my work evaluation, my supervisor was like, "You're doing so well. Just get that confidence, because you already know it. Like you're doing it." And I'm like sitting there thinking, "Wow, what a great theme in my life is just being confident in myself." Like that's just a common theme that I just noticed taking form. So little light bulb moments.
I got it. Like I get that. And, you know, one of my mantras that came through from my own like spiritual team a couple of years ago was like, I literally heard it like this, like, Amy, confidence doesn't come before you do the scary thing. It's never going to. If you're waiting for confidence, you're going to be waiting forever. Just do it. Then you get your confidence builds, right? Like it builds.
Fake it till you make it.
Basically, kind of, right? Doesn't sound very spiritual, but basically, like, because people feel it, because the more that you come across, even if you're kind of feel somewhat uncertain inside, like the more that you're just like, okay, I'm just doing it. I'm just going to give everything that I have, just going to leave it on the table. I'm not going to question myself. People feel that and they're like, whoa, this girl knows what she's talking about. This is an expert. That's all it is. And I also feel like in terms of our mediumship, the more the less confident I feel going into a reading, which is very, very unlikely now after the years of experience. But in the beginning, when I would feel shaky and unconfident, it felt like the channel was not as fluid. And I thought, okay, you know, like I'm just learning how to communicate with spirit. Now, in hindsight, looking back, I was just learning how to be confident in my ability. Myself. It had nothing to do with spirit, right?
Yes, like, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. And I just want to put that out there for people that are, you know, a budding medium or working with their different clear senses, which is what we talked about today.
What a good segue.
I've been having a lot of good segues lately, like in my readings and stuff when I'm recording stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, perfect segue for the next one. So yeah, we're kind of, you know, using that information that we've been talking about of kind of breaking it down, getting a little bit more simplified, right? Like, what did we need to do at the beginning, right? That kind of stuff. And so we've decided to do an episode on each of the Clair Senses. So a full episode on each one. So it's going to be like a little series over the next couple weeks for you.
Exciting.
It's exciting. And
we should do more series.
I think so. I think
this is like the beginning of a beautiful thing.
Yeah, let's do series. If you guys have any suggestions on
a series
of sorts, let us know for sure. But today we're going to start with clairvoyance.
Yeah. Okay. I love this. So I was trying to see, because Amy and I both love history. We love just to know, where did that thing come from? Where did why do we say clairvoyance, or why do we say this? Where did that come from? So, I mean, that's something that's interested me. So maybe it'll interest our listeners. Okay. But clairvoyance comes from, and all of this is from Wikipedia, just as a heads up. I did very thorough research, as you can tell. This from.
Hey, we have lived experience.
We're gonna tie it in. Yeah. We're gonna tie. I'm not just gonna read you Wikipedia, guys. But clairvoyance comes from the French word clair, which means clear. And I'm sorry to our French listeners. Listen, my French is a little rusty. Okay. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. And voyance, which means vision. So voyance. So clairvoyance. Is that it? Oui.
Clairvoyance. So clear vision. Clear
vision. Yeah. And it's interesting because this word sort of came about, I think it said that it made a brief appearance in the 17th century in the English literature. But then as we go into the 19th century, as we move into like spiritualism, this is where all of these words start to just like take shape and take form. And this is where we start to hear more about, if you've ever heard, parapsychology, which is basically the study of, I think, the paranormal or things that we cannot understand. And there was a lot of study on clairvoyance, of course, because during the spiritualist movement, all of these, mediums were coming about, these psychics, some legit and others not, because right? Which actually, it's interesting, and maybe I'm going a little bit off topic here.
Never.
But I don't know if you feel this way, because as I'm talking, it's kind of reminding me of today, right? Where there's a lot of, back then, right? You basically would pay money. You'd go to see a show. It was like going to a concert or whatever, right? Or a magic show. That's what people were paying to see. They were paying, people to see you communicate with the dead or communicate with their loved ones, or wanting to, watch a seance. So that's what they were seeing. And there were you have to make it interesting. So there were lights and things going off. And some of these were not real. Okay. Right. And it's kind of making me think of today, where we have these sort of scammers, online, right, trying to present themselves as like, hey, I want to give you a reading. I was really feeling your energy, or like, you always get that message from a scammer.
It's like the same message that's been copied and pasted. It's like, beloved, hello, my beloved.
Yeah. Oh my God. And I felt like such an idiot. I even met Amy. I remember messaging you. I think this was a few weeks ago, being like, somebody on Instagram wants me to like get a Facebook request for them or respond to something on Facebook. And I was like, I don't know this person. I've given them a reading, so I think their account just got hacked.
Yeah.
And Amy was like, yeah, that's definitely a scam. I was like, okay, yeah, just wanted to double check.
I got a ton from people about cryptocurrency.
What?
And I was like, yeah, no, this is because a person would message me, somebody that like followed me and somebody that I knew of, and they'd send this really random message from their account asking me about my interest in crypto, like currency and all of this stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, this is not the person. Like there's
okay.
Right. So I just was like, yeah, heads up, your account has been hacked.
Yeah. And you're reading those messages. If it feels like a red flag, it most likely is a red flag. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't trust those messages. Anyways, it just made me think of like how we're evolving and how like things are always changing and moving, but yet some things still same. Some things never change, right?
Like there's always going to be like phonies in every, like I don't want to say in every field, but like certainly in like it's this field. It's because it is hard to explain because like, well, we believe that everybody could have access to it, but some people believe they do not have access in it. It's the invisible, right? So
Yes.
it's like, it's not become yet so mainstream that people take it as fact. I do believe that one day it will be fact, right? But right now it is not. So yeah, there's always going to be people that's like, well, there's like, for instance, if you were to book like, I don't know, like a hair appointment, like it's really unlikely that a phony is going to, like, you would know that they were a phony, right? Like they wouldn't be able to cut your hair properly or something. But when it comes to this work, going into it, you might not know because it's this invisible thing that somebody's bringing in. But I think that is why us personally, like we are such advocates for like evidential mediumship, because it's like bringing in those specifics.
Well, that's it. That's it. Right. And that's, I think, I always strive for, we always want that. And I would say that I think the majority of my readings, if not all, there's evidential, and it might not be the whole reading, but it comes. I think it comes.
You have to have some. I feel like even if it's just a little bit where somebody comes in and they're like, okay, I have a man here. He makes me feel like he's a father. He's bringing up this specific thing. He's talking about this specific thing. Like there's enough specifics that then when you do bring in the more like the guidance kind of stuff, trust it because the evidence came in before.
Yes.
Right? Like I'm thinking back to a reading I did last week, and it was a tough one actually because there was a lot of grief, like heavy grief associated with the loss of a spouse. And there was these bits and pieces that came in, like the spirit communicator was very, very chatty. And I could tell that his spouse was like soaking it in, and she was starting to like go, okay, I think there's something here. But the thing that really got her, and sometimes it's like the most random thing, right? Because something came in about, she had her granddaughter with her as well. So it's two people. And the granddaughter had asked about spirit signs. And I said, okay, he's showing me, what did he show me? I can't remember what the first thing he brought through, but it was something that was the color white, like specifically the color white. And then she said, what about feathers? And I said, feathers, I feel like a yes, but he's adamantly saying white feather, white feather, white feather. And she's like, interesting, because I find like all kinds of feathers. I feel like they're all him. And I said, I do feel like feathers, yes, are a yes from him, but he's adamantly talking about it being a white feather. So we were kind of like, okay, like, I don't know what that's about. And then at the end, he brought up like their anniversary and things like that, and flowers. And I said, he's showing me a white lily. And she was like, interesting. No, like, I don't know if I have any specific memory with that. And I said, wait a second. All of a sudden something like clicked, and I was like, wait a second. Every single spirit sign that he has brought through, he has been adamantly telling me that it's white. What is with the color white?
Yeah.
And it was like emotion, like just like you could tell.
Wow.
Oh, right. And the granddaughter said her favorite color is white. Everything has to be white. And he knew that. So like everything, she dresses in white, like everything is white.
Amy,
like, look at my arm here. And I was like,
chills. Like actually.
Yes. And I was just like, whoa. And that that might seem like a minor thing.
No, but it's not
the biggest thing. It was, even though there was like, I felt like for me, I was like, oh, there's bigger pieces of evidence here, right? Like the manner in which he died and where he died and all of that.
Yeah, all those things. But then you
the
get
thing that got her was that. And I was like, you never know what's going to be the thing. So you just say everything. Doesn't have to make sense.
Say everything. You say everything.
When he was saying white feather, and they were like I could have lost my confidence in that moment and been like, okay, like, I don't know what I'm doing. Right. This is not with the right thing.
No, but exactly.
But we have to trust the spirit communicator.
Yes. It's like, I always tell that, years ago, I gave a reading to a couple, and I'm sorry, we're so off topic, but I know we'll get back to clairvoyance. This is sort of into it. This is about the scene. Okay. So clairvoyance. about
I was
seeing with our
seeing
third
the white
eye.
stuff, right? I was
Yeah.
seeing it. Yes.
We're
Yeah.
seeing it. So we're seeing the images in our mind's eye, which is what clairvoyance means, to like see it in the mind's eye. Okay.
Yes.
And I'm giving a reading to this couple. The husband had readings before, but I could tell, his partner, she was a bit like, yeah, okay, like I guess there's something to this, right? But
Yeah.
maybe not fully. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until the end of the reading, right, where all of a sudden I go, you guys have plans after this? They're like, yeah. I go, are you going to Canadian Tire? Which is
This is
a
so
hardware
random.
store.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so random.
Yeah.
But her face, that was like that moment, these little moments for me, when I say little things like this, are just almost like popped, her eyes popped out. And it was like, yeah, like that's literally, and I was like, is it for the backyard or is something like outdoor furniture? She goes, we're literally going to go shop for outdoor, like we're going to go shop for like chairs or stuff, forget what it was.
Yeah.
But and she was like, whoa,
That was the thing.
that was the thing for her, right? And I'm just gonna say, I think, to folks right now, because I know there are people out there who get readings and they want that thing, they want that super specific thing, and sometimes that specific thing doesn't always come through. It doesn't, but
Something
there's
will
going to
be
be
surprised.
other things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But even if the thing that doesn't come through for you, I always feel like, one, I think it's about, seeing maybe from a different perspective, or
Yeah.
seeing what else came through, what came through. And maybe it's even like, maybe it's not a matter of in that moment it resonated, but like later on it will resonate.
Yeah, absolutely. Like last week, I actually had a reading done by somebody. Another Canadian medium. I won't like give her a full shout out because I don't know if she'd want one, but another Canadian medium. And I was like, you know what? Why not? Sure. So I did it. And it's funny because afterwards she's like, hey, are you the intuitive rising? And I was like, yeah. She goes, oh my God, I follow you on Instagram. Like we didn't know we were connected. Anyhow, something came through from my grandfather who's in spirit, who I don't think he's ever come through in a reading before in such a way. Like normally it's like acknowledgement of him there, but like not really any further stuff, for whatever reason. And he came through and he brought forward this evidence of like another person that I didn't know existed. Okay. So I'm just like, I don't think so. Like I didn't dismiss the reading because I know how readings go and I know how spirit works. So I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to make a note of it. And then afterwards I was like telling my mom, because this would be her father. I was telling my mom about the things that came through and I went, oh, I forgot to say, Poppy said he was with this person. And I said, but that can't be because that wasn't like, I don't know about that. And she was like, no, that's true. Yeah. That, and I was like, what? And,
oh my God.
So I love it because, I was like, I messaged the medium afterwards and wanted to let you know, I wanted to validate that for you. But I loved also how it didn't, when I was like, no, like, I don't think so. She didn't like waver. I could feel the confidence in her. So she was just like, no, he's adamantly saying this. So I'm just going to leave it. Like, I'm not, so she didn't like question it. She didn't try to like get more and try to explain it to me. It just was what it was. Yeah. I really liked that.
And especially like, I don't know. I just feel like that you were able to share that with your mom, and maybe that was also just a little bit of a message for mom.
Well, it definitely was because it was related. I don't know how personal I want to get here, but like,
no, you don't have to.
No, it's okay. I won't get too personal, but we talked about my nanny before, who is like a second mom to me. And I always give her a shout out because I feel as if her, my kind of intuitiveness and all these things come from her side of the family. It was her grandmother that was the medium and the tea leaf reader. She's not doing so well. She's, almost 95.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like a quick turn. And so he was coming through to tell us that he's making space for her. Yeah. He's getting stuff ready.
He's getting stuff ready. Yeah. Oh.
So I was like, oh, it makes so much sense that he would be coming in now. Like, he's not that chatty communicator, really. He hasn't come in readings before, but this one, it was important that he.
It was important that he came through
and that he brought that through. So yeah.
And that's, yeah. I mean, I could tell, you know, obviously,
it makes
understandably,
yeah,
it makes you emotional, obviously, yeah. But yeah, I just, that's, I don't know. For me, I look at that as like, wow, that's like such a kind of a gift to.
It is, because I know it's difficult, like even for us to do this work and know that there's something more, right? It's still, we still grieve. We
still grieve.
Yeah,
we still,
you know, difficult, right? But I feel like there's a gift in knowing, and I discovered this with my dad's passing.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when he was on life support and he came through to me spiritually, like that's the first really.
Yeah.
That's the first time that I was aware, like, oh my goodness, like I'm communicating with his spirit. That was such a gift in the grieving process, because although I cried and the grief came in waves, and I cry at like Christmas or, you know, like when he's not around, I also know that he's still there.
He's still there.
I know that I can communicate to him.
Yeah.
And so it does help to know that, even, you know, when other family members.
Yeah, absolutely.
Such a gift in it.
Is.
Yeah.
I think so. It's interesting, and I feel like no matter what, even if you're a skeptic or a believer, I feel like there is something to readings. I think there is something to say that it can absolutely help with the grieving process, based on my own experiences and
me too,
in conversations with others. And so for me, that's why I just feel like I'm gonna forever grateful that I even get to sit here and even be on this podcast. And even if we have whatever, I don't know how many 100, you know, whatever listeners, we love all of you, and you know, I'm grateful to be able to do this. Humbled to do this. Like, there's no.
Yeah, it's always going to humble us. Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely is a gift. So yeah, just ways in which those are kind of examples of clairvoyance.
Bringing it back to
the way that he came through in that reading. Like the first thing he brought through was a peanut, and she's like, it's like a peanut in the shell, and he shows me it like sitting on a railing, and I was like, yeah, I know exactly what that is, because one of the memories I have with him is he always fed the squirrels, right? And it was always the peanuts, like the full peanut,
shells,
right? The shell. And I always remember that, and I always think about him. He had like this jar of peanuts like on the windowsill, right? So I'm like, yeah, like that's an example of clairvoyance. Like
she sees it.
Yeah.
In the mind's eye.
Like back to the mechanics of like
So this is interesting, because there's been there's been quite a bit of research that's been done on clairvoyance, specifically also around remote viewing. Have you heard of this? Yeah. So remote viewing is the ability to clairvoyantly kind of see, you know, with your senses, what's, you know, where somebody is, or like what's going on in another environment. Okay. And it's really interesting, because I always think this is a really cool fact that during the 70s and even into the mid 90s, the government was funding the Stanford Research Institute to study remote viewing. And there also was there's been a lot of government work done on remote viewing, and even during the war, World War II, with the military, they've used remote viewers to sort of see what's going on behind enemy lines.
Yes. I watched a documentary,
a whole thing on that
had that piece in it. I think it was a Netflix one, but I don't remember what documentary it was.
Yeah.
But it talked about, like, there was it was within the military, and there was a woman that came in, and she was kind of like trained for the day of like how to remote view. And then they did like like a practice exercise where the other person then went somewhere, like in another location. And the person who was remote viewing had to like bring forward what she was seeing.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, they took her to the location where the other person was. And she was just like, because so many things she saw were in actuality, like truth and fact.
Wow.
Yeah. If I can remember where I saw that, I'll like put it in the show notes. I don't remember at the top of my mind. Was it
I was going to say, is it the Beyond Death, or what is the afterlife? Something.
I don't remember what it's called. A Surviving Death?
Surviving Death. Okay, yeah. Something about the death and the afterlife. Because I'm sure they talked about it. I'm sure there must have been an episode or something talked briefly about remote viewing. But I think it's really interesting. And have you ever had any experience with remote viewing yourself?
Yeah. So,
that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I can. It's interesting because, I don't know about you, but like I'll often get, random, I shouldn't say random. They're not random. They're intentional. I'll get DMs on Facebook or Instagram from people that kind of say, hey, could you help me with this missing person? It happens once in a while. I've always been kind of like, I don't know if that's my thing. And I feel, did we talk about this? I feel like we talked
maybe, yeah.
I used to feel some guilt around it because like, oh, if I have this gift, then, why wouldn't I? I don't know if it's part of my particular path. Because it doesn't feel like it comes super easily to me, or there's some sort of resistance there. And I haven't figured out what it is. I think part of it is the heavy responsibility of it and the expectations. I think that's partly part of it. And certainly like maybe I'll do that more often. But there was this one time where there was somebody that was missing. And like within a couple days of it happening, a bunch of my friends and family even were like, because it was local to the area, can you do you see anything that's happening? And I brought through some very vivid things that did in fact turn out to be true. So it wasn't about the location of the missing child, but it was about the lead up to it and what potentially happened or would evidence that they would find.
Wow.
So this child is still missing, I should say.
Oh, okay.
I do not believe that the child is living anymore, personally, but there was things about like where the child was and like different things that they would find. And those things have come to fruition. Now that time I did reach out in an email, and I emailed what came through to me to the local police department. And they just like thanked me for the information. That was that. Like it didn't go further than that. But yeah, in that case, I just kind of like sat for a moment. I thought about the child. I kind of pictured him in my mind's eye, and I started to see the environment and like little things. So I do feel like I can do that. But like I said, I didn't get a clear sense of where he was, where the child was now, just that I didn't get a sense that he was not with us.
Anymore.
So because I couldn't get that, I was like, I think that's the piece of that resistance, like that.
That's hard. And that's very separate of, nobody wants to be, you don't want to be that person to say, I don't feel like, I don't feel like this person is still living. You don't want to say that.
And that's another piece, right?
That's, and then there's the other response, that just pressure of it, wanting just as, wanting to find this person. Yeah.
So that's one of those times that, I believe I can tap in, but there's something there that I'm not fully ready to go towards. But there's been times where I've like, been thinking about somebody, and then kind of get an image of something like where they might be. And then in fact, they were there, like things like that. So yeah, I do believe that I can remote view. Do you too?
Well,
I don't know if I intentionally do though. That's the thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how I feel with it. It's not like I'm like, Where is Amy right
like
now?
we're not spying on people.
Yeah. Spy. Yeah, please don't think I would ever. Oh my God. I don't want to. I don't want to do that, just so everybody knows. But there was the only remote viewing thing that I can think of that was like pretty profound, and I think I've shared the story on the podcast, but for those that haven't heard the story, I was seeing this person and I had this overwhelming sensation that like it was going to end. I just knew it. I had no reason to think this. This person had given me no indication that they wanted to end this relationship, okay? I was even talking with my friend on the phone saying, I just have this like foreboding feeling like something's going to happen. It's going to end. And they're like, they, again, talking me through it. No indication that they wanted to end it. So I'm sitting there and all of a sudden, okay, literally feels like out of nowhere. But I think I was just being kind of like, hey, heads up, because I do better with notice. Okay, so that I could maybe process and maybe handle the situation better. And I think maybe because I was given,
the guides knew that.
The guides knew that, and they were like, you're just gonna need this. I think you're gonna need this. So they gave it to me. But I was shown this image of this person talking to their friend. And I could see the colors of the walls. I could see that they were pacing back and forth, wondering if they should keep going with the relationship, if they should end it. And they were just having this conversation with their friend. I get a text the next day saying, hey, I want to come over. It's like, okay. Right. And those that know this person, it makes very sense. They're very much like, I get an idea. I just got to do it now. Very like,
yeah.
What's the word? I don't know.
When it's over, it's over.
It's over. Yeah. Like it's kind of spontaneous and very quick about things. Impulsive. Thank you. Yeah. It's very impulsive. And so they came over and they were basically like, I want to end the relationship. And I said, I kind of knew. And there's that joke of, well, you're psychic, so maybe I don't have to say anything.
Yeah. And
I was like, were you talking to your friend last night about it? Like about if you should keep going with the relationship? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, was the wall? I can't even remember what color it was, but were the walls this color? And it was like a very specific color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't like white.
It wasn't like white. Okay. And I feel like I could even see, was it carpeted? Like I just saw the space, right? The details of it. And like, yeah. Okay. That's weird. And maybe this person, maybe like me saying that, they were like, yeah, we got to end it. Cause like you freak me out already with this stuff.
Yes. I can't get away with anything for you.
I can't get away with anything.
No. My husband always said, like, he would say that, like when we started dating, he's like, I don't plan, and I don't think I'll ever do anything, but I know that if I did, you would know. You would know about it. I did, because you are like a human lie detector. And I'm like, That's, I feel as if that's tied into some other of the Clairs.
Yes.
Right.
We're going to definitely go into. Yeah.
They can overlap. So I personally experience all of them. I think you do too, right? Yes. But there are some people that might just experience clairvoyance without the other ones, right? Or some of them can be more
than another
than the other ones. Like for me, I personally feel as if my strongest is clairvoyance and clairsentience, which we'll talk about in another episode. But the other ones I still experience them, but they're less strong, or they're less like relied on by the spirit world. I feel, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just really quickly wanted to say, like, we all have like senses, right? Like we see and we hear and we touch and taste and all of these things, right? With our 5 tangible, like material, right? Like bodily sensations. The clairs are simply those, but internal.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. So it's like, your vision is not with the naked. When we're talking about clairvoyance, we're not talking about seeing with the naked eye. We're talking about seeing with the third eye.
With the third eye. In your mind's eye.
In your mind's eye, right? Like, which I think last episode we talked about how that can be connected to your imagination. You can think it's your imagination, right?
Yes.
I certainly did for many, many years.
Yeah.
Right? And if like your ex had not gone through with it and made the decision, you could have just thought, okay, that's just my imagination, like coming up with worst case scenarios, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a lot of the times, like that is really something that's happening.
That's happening.
Just chooses something different, right? Like,
yes.
You never know.
It's like having, and okay, maybe this is a different Claire. I guess it would be a different Claire, but it's like feeling like your friend's gonna call and they call.
Yeah. That's another one.
Right?
But clairvoyance, is like clear seeing. So in your mind's eye, it can feel like your imagination.
Yes. And a lot of people, a common question I get asked and a common question I've asked my other, we've talked about it before, is how do you know what is your own imagination versus spirits? Right? And I think it can be pretty difficult to discern sometimes.
At times, yeah.
I like to give the indication that like spirit is really quick and fast. They vibrate. Yeah.
One and done.
One and done. They vibrate on a totally different frequency than us. And so if I'm thinking about, I want spaghetti, all of a sudden something pops into my head like, oh, I better call my mom right now or something, right? Or I see an image, or maybe I think entrepreneurs can experience this a lot. Creative individuals, right? Maybe you're, and this kind of goes back into our conversation last week about, we were talking about channeling last week?
Yes, it was last week.
It was last week where we talked about channeling. And I feel like when you're kind of downloading, when you see a vision in your head, or you're feeling maybe artists or creative, you're feeling inspired by something, maybe there's a vision board going on in your head, right? I think you're channeling. I think that's clairvoyance. I think that's like your download.
Yeah. Right? And I think, I was reading something for the next episode, we're going to talk about clairaudience. And I wrote something down in my notes that like, I feel like is still applicable for clairvoyance. But the question that came up when I was reading something was like, how do you know, like, because clairaudience is going to be like hearing, right? So the question was like, how do you know the difference between clairaudience and mental illness, right? Which is like a valid question. Like, yes. I'm hearing voices, like, am I mentally ill, or is it spirit, right? Which is totally a valid question. And the answer, which I feel is applicable also to this in a roundabout way, was, that clairaudience won't cause you mental distress. It won't cause you distress. Yeah. So when I think a way to explain, like, is this me or is this spirit, is like potentially like, spirit's going to be quick and it's like going to come in. It feels like almost like unattached, like you're not separate, actively thinking it and bringing it in. It just kind of comes in. Yes. Or like you can use the example of like maybe seeing something in your mind's eye that causes you anxiety. Spirit's not going to make you feel anxiety. They're not going to bring you an image of like somebody getting in a car accident, which then stirs up your anxiety, right? It's not going to be like that. No. So I think that's a good rule of thumb for like all of the clairs. Yeah. As a way to discern. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Yes, I agree. Yeah. So it's just very, it just feels very like detached, like you're not actively,
it's detached from like what you would think of outside the norm.
Maybe, like it's not like you're sitting down
from what you're
trying to come up with a plan, right? You're making a pros and cons list and you're like actively thinking about what to write about. It's something that comes in where you're like, oh, like where did that
inspiration, an idea, that aha moment that Oprah talks about, right? That's
I feel like that's connected to spirit, whether it's our own spirit, right? Our own higher self, our guide.
Buzzword, higher self.
Yeah. I totally agree. But it's seeing, I was just watching something the other day with a evidential medium. Some page on Facebook I must have liked or something. And there was an evidential medium that was like, it was a Zoom chat. And she had posted the call up on this page. And like different people were asking her different questions. And she was talking about clairvoyance, but she said, what did she say? She used it like subjective and objective. I feel clairvoyance. Objective. I feel like, I don't remember the words, but it was something like seeing, because the person asked, like, can you see spirit with your eye? Or can people do that? Yeah. And she was like, yes, it's not as common as seeing it within your mind's eye. And I think she called it like objective clairvoyance, but I can't be sure. And the other one was like subjective clairvoyance.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like seeing it inside. So Yes, I do feel like we can see spirit with our eyes at times. I feel like both of you and I have seen things maybe potentially at times. For me, I remember seeing kind of like a shadow. This happened soon after my grandfather passed away, where like there was just something in me that knew it was him. It was like the same height, the same something about it was him. And then also after my cat passed away that morning, like my husband went and had to go to the vet to put the cat down, and then I went into the bathtub because, like I said, that's where I go to do anything, breathe, fry, process, anything, right? I'm in the bathtub, and I was there, and I kept like seeing him in the corner of my eye, but it wasn't his physical, like little furry body. It was like a shadow. And I kept like, I knew he was there without a shadow of a doubt. I could feel him because he used to do that, because he was like, we always called him a princess. He wasn't superly like overly affectionate, but he was like a little, like, he always, especially like when I would go in the bath, he always had to sit there and like sit. I don't know, why are cats like that?
I don't know. Like that too. Ted likes to come into the bath every time.
Just sit there.
Just to sit
there. Almost like, I'm just gonna sit here and make sure nothing happens to you. Like, I don't know what it is. Yeah. But yeah, so I do believe that we can see with our actual naked eye at times, but I don't think it's as common a way for spirit to visit us.
Yeah. I always feel like the shadow energies are the spirits or the soul's way of like trying to manifest the energy.
To make it.
To like, make us see
really, really hard. Yeah.
Trying really hard to come through. Because I also feel like this, like every time I think about this, it just blows my mind, because I think I really do feel like that's the case, where our eyes can only see so much. We can only see, our brains can only understand so much. So like if we think of like something that we're not familiar with is trying to show itself, right? And what our eyes are interpreting it as a shadow, because that's what our brains are doing, right?
All it will allow us to like.
That's all it will allow us to see.
I believe that, because even if you think about things like, you know, the analogy I use often about like a medium being like a radio, right? Or you think about a medium being Google, right? Like the internet, whatever it is.
That's exactly it.
Right now, there's like radio waves and like internet stuff. Like, I don't even know the terms, but they are all around us, enabling us to be able to record and to see and to talk. We don't see it. Can you imagine what life would be like if we could see all energy, right? Like it would be.
And that's why I feel like some people talk about the people talk about psychedelics being a spiritual experience.
Oh yeah.
Because I really feel like something's happening. Obviously something's happening with our brains, but like something's happening.
Off a lens in a way. Like the book I was reading, remember I mentioned it a couple episodes, the Being Ram Dass.
Yes.
So that was his like autobiography.
He was a scientist, had LSD, and then it was like, holy shit.
Worked at Harvard, was really into like research and things, took some psychedelics, and life was never the same, because that was the doorway into his spiritual kind of awakening in his journey. But, you know, he talks about this in like one time he did that, and he was kind of sitting on the couch, but he was like looking down at himself. He's like, he could see his legs and his body, but like he was outside of it. And he was just like, you know, it was like kind of this really rude awakening that, oh my God, like I am more than this. Like I am something totally separate from this.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I thought that was really cool, because people do see things like that. And I think I've talked before about how like in the past, before I was really aware that I was a medium and stuff like that, I would go get Reiki or I would go get a massage, and I see energy in my head, and I didn't realize I was seeing energy. I thought like, okay, so when I have a massage and my eyes are closed, it's like fireworks in my brain. What's that about? Right?
Yeah.
And then it wasn't uncomfortable. It was kind of like, okay, like it was kind of fun, like enjoyable. But yeah, like I was seeing energy, like clairvoyantly, which is really cool. But it was also, I'm thinking about, I almost want to share a personal story, and then I don't know if it's too personal. Because, well, we're talking about psychedelics. I've never taken a psychedelic. Okay.
Neither have I.
But just like, I think it's like okay enough to say that I have taken an edible before. Okay, this is actually a funny story.
Amy, you're too much. Slow down.
Like years ago, okay? Like it's not a regular thing. In fact, I probably will never do it again. So I was safe. I was at home, like my husband and I, right? And
Sorry,
he gave me like just too big of a piece, okay?
Yeah.
And it was such a jarring, awful experience. I thought I was going to die, okay? Like I really did.
Yeah.
I hope it's okay to share this.
I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, but like it made me think.
How dare you, Amy?
I'm sure I'm not the first person.
There are people who are listening to this that like, oh man, yesterday I had a mushroom. Yeah.
Like what?
No, I'm just kidding. No kidding.
You know,
but yes,
it's legal in Canada as well. It's not like we're being illegal. But it was the reason that just came into like my awareness to kind of talk about it. I feel like Spirit gave me permission to say it was because when I was thinking about this experience with seeing energy, I was like, I said out loud, well, it wasn't really like uncomfortable, but then in my body, it was going, yeah, it kind of is, because it's the sense of like having no control over what I'm seeing. And it's almost like, I just want to like close my eyes. I just want to rest, but it's like, it just keeps happening. So you don't have any control over what you're seeing. And it reminded me of that experience. So the reason I said like, I didn't like that experience was because I felt like my brain was like this.
Yeah.
And it would
you were oversense.
Oh my God. I was so overwhelmed. It was like, I would see this and then this and then this and then this. And it was like, I just need a minute. Like, and I remember laying in bed and going, this makes me laugh, but I remember going, I need a pen. Oh my God, I'm a genius. Oh my God, this is so genius. And I like try to write stuff down. And the next day it was like gibberish on the paper. Right. But it was like, stuff was coming through that was like mind blowing. Right. And it was like, was I experiencing like energy? Like, was I experiencing what somebody
like what
on a trip? You know what I mean? Like, it was jarring in the sense that I felt like I had no control. And that's the thing. And that's kind of what Ram talked about too.
Yes.
Something's happening and it's almost like
you don't have like control.
I have no control. I don't know what's happening. So that's the part where I was like, I thought I was going to die. I'd never want to do it again. It was this sense of like, I don't know how to make my brain stop thinking. I don't know how to make my brain stop like seeing things. I just don't want to see it anymore. And it wouldn't stop.
Yes.
So it felt, interestingly enough, I think that was like 2 months before I realized I was a medium.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So maybe something.
Everybody's going to be like, okay, we need to go out. We need to get some edibles because we got to become a medium.
Okay, so like, yeah.
We do not condone this behavior. You're an adult. Make your own choice.
Listen, make your own choices. I've taken edibles before. When I take edibles, it's at a very
tiny,
like low, because if I take any more, I'll be like Amy being like, it's too much.
It was like in chocolate bar form, and Scott was like, here, you take half of the like fake Twix bar, right? And I'm just like,
and you're like,
like this.
You don't know like how much. But it's true. Like I've had times where I've taken like back in university, like I took too much pot and it was like, oh, not good, bad news bears, right? So, but now they're talking about, there's a really cool documentary, like, I know we're kind of short for time now, but there's a really cool few documentaries on Netflix. One is about, I think, the world of fungi, and it talks about mushrooms, and it can talk about psychedelics, and it's really amazing. It's really, really cool. Visually also stunning. But then there's another documentary right now. It's a bit of a series on Netflix about psychedelics. You should watch it because there's some really cool things that like I never knew about. Now I could be totally wrong, but what I thought was also interesting, I'm from I grew up a little bit in Saskatchewan, and they studied psychedelics in Saskatchewan. Yeah, about the effects on it. And basically what they did was they took these psychedelics, or I think it was LSD, and they just gave it to all of these scientists. You didn't really need to say like you were a scientist. You just need to have like something on a card that says, I'm doing this in the name of research or whatever.
Yeah.
And they gave you as much as you want, and you could see what the effects were. Okay. And the reason why it happened was somebody, I think one of the scientists, some of it got on his skin, and he had this like really overwhelming experience that he was saying that when he was on his way home, it was like the world was like a concave mirror. Okay. Things were like wavy.
Yeah.
Which is really, he was seeing a lot of colors. Like he was seeing a lot of shapes, which I think is interesting because we talk about, and some of this has come through just with like in readings about sacred geometry, about the earth being made up of, say, these shapes,
Symbols and
shapes, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely feel like it opens things up. There's also another a part of it where somebody was having, now obviously this is one, might not work for everybody, right? But they were an alcoholic, and they did some LSD, and all of a sudden they stopped being an alcoholic. Like they had this very spiritual awakening, right? Where it just stopped. They just stopped. And it's wild. Obviously not for everybody.
No,
right?
yeah.
But it's interesting to see the evidence or some of the things that are coming out now about guided LSD or small micro dosage of hallucinogenics helping our mental health or helping us in some form. So it's obviously not for everybody. And I'm not saying go out there and do it,
but also not judging it.
But I'm not
open-minded about the possibility,
which is, it's just interesting.
It's interesting. And I think for me, it was just like, I mean, you said microdose, and I think that's the important thing, right? For me, it was too much at once. And so as somebody that like doesn't do any of that, like I don't even drink anymore, like judgments, it's just, I don't. So for me, it was just way too much at once. So it kind of felt super overwhelming, but I bet if it was in a smaller dose, all of that stuff that was coming through would have felt more manageable for me, and perhaps would have opened the door to something or inspired me in some way. But it was just almost like it was
too much.
It was too fast.
You were on overdrive.
I was on overdrive. I was like, I need my brain to stop. I just I felt like, how do I escape this?
Yeah.
Like, how do I escape this thought? And it actually afterwards, I'm like, this is how people must feel, like people that have
these like
step and then like done something like, like stepped off a building or something. I'm like, I don't want to like, overgeneralize, but honestly, in that moment, my mind was going, so I thought it would never stop. I can see how somebody could do something.
If you're not, it's like anything. I feel like if you're not responsible, right? Or if you're doing something irresponsible, like that, like,
if you don't have people kind of like keeping you safe.
Like like the moms, some of the moms would say in high school, like, listen, if you drink,
make sure
you drink, but you better call me, and you're gonna do it in this house.
Right.
Something, right?
Yeah, like, because you need those people to look out for you in case, something you don't have a bad reaction.
Obviously, not condoning also.
No, I know. I feel like we have to say that over and over again. It just reminded me of it because it's this feeling of not being in control anymore. And in a way, in a smaller dose, that feeling of not being in control potentially would have been very comforting, because I do feel like moving into more of a spiritual kind of life is surrendering and letting go of control a little bit. It was just too much at once. So it felt jarring, and it felt like scary to me. Right. But like when I read about Rom's experience, because he also kind of went into it like very like a lot, like he was doing that a lot, right? So I feel like some of his experiences were probably
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I always tell, like I say this to Alex, and I'm like, you know what? I go down the rabbit hole every day with my readings. I don't necessarily feel like I want LSD.
I know, like
I'm seeing things, I'm feeling things, you know. But
that reminds me of my mom. Like my mom will probably be embarrassed that I say this, but when I remember when I was little, she'd always go, "I don't need to drink. I'm high on life." And I'm like, "Yeah, like we're just high on life.
We're just high on life.
High on life, doing readings, tapping into spirit."
That's it. Should we pull a card on that note?
Yeah, I've got one. Okay,
great. Go, Amy. Go for it.
Okay, so I felt called to pull from the Angels Among Us deck here, and pulled a card I haven't pulled before. Look at this, Commander Ashtar. So it's
okay, Ashtar.
We got the alien on the shirt
today.
What do you have on the shirt today? Do you have an alien?
I do.
Yeah, look.
It's also Bigfoot because
so
I've been watching a lot of Expedition Bigfoot, which is a TV show. So anyway.
So this says on the card, Starseed, Space Travel, Galactic Guides. So awesome, because we're kind of talking about,
love it,
different things, right? So Commander Ashtar is an intergalactic ascended master. He works with other ascended star beings and the Intergalactic Council to help planet Earth reach higher levels of consciousness, love, and wisdom. Commander Ashtar, can help you with your stars, with the stars, and to your star origin, supporting star seeds. And then it goes on to say starseed is anyone who feels their soul originated on another planet or just has a deep connection to the stars, is one of Commander Ashtar's roles, and he can help you to feel more at home on this planet and remember your own galactic mission.
I like that.
Me too. So in terms of like this guide breaks things down like by different kind of topics. So for love and relationship, the guidance is to work on relationships with yourself. When you know yourself, you are better able to create and keep positive and loving relationships. The message for home is feeling at home in the world can be tough for those who have galactic origins. Bring the stars into your home by opening the curtains at night or adding galactic artwork. Work, the old paradigm of 9 to 5 until you retire may not work for you. Look outside the box and be open to work opportunities that may seem a little out there to others. Hello, like what we do, right? Money.
My shirt.
A strange concept for many starseeds. It may be a good time to read some money books and try to educate yourself on how the system works.
Okay, universe. Stop telling me I'm bad at money. I get it already.
Try to see money as simply a tool to help you fulfill your galactic mission. Well-being. Get outside and look at the sky. Watch the clouds roll by and go stargazing at night. We spend so much time indoors that it's easy to forget there is a whole wide universe out there. And lastly, for spirituality, meet with your galactic guides and travel to other planets and star systems in meditation.
Yes.
Right? Ask Commander Ashtar to take you space traveling in his spacecraft.
There you go. You don't need LSD. You ask Commander Ashtar.
Oh, amazing.
Is it Ashtar or Ashtar?
Ashtar.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Ashtar.
It's funny because when that piece came up about money, this is a book I've been reading, highly recommended to me. Can't say a happy pocket full of money. This is like the science, like the quantum physics behind abundance and money. And so when I finish this book, I absolutely will talk about it on this podcast. But it reminds me of this when it talks about, money is simply a tool to help us on this mission. Something I'm learning is money is just energy. Just an energetic exchange. The value is something that we've placed on it.
It's true.
Right. It even talks about like how, how there used to be like a gold, I think it's called a gold bar standard or something with money. So it had to be like the amount of money that's out there is based on balanced with actual gold.
Okay.
Right. And that that has not been the case for a long time. So there's actually just like people, it's just creating money, but with it's just money. Like it's just paper. The only reason that it has any sort of value is because we've placed value on it. Like it literally doesn't.
Like everything else in this world, humans have just labeled and have,
Yeah, but I just find it so
I know.
interesting.
It is
I know
very
there's a
cool.
lot of stuff happening in the world right now with like inflations and interest rate and
Yes.
money and
Yes.
scarcity in so many different ways. And I just feel like there's some sort of like collective cleansing happening right now.
I do feel like I don't know in what lifetime, in what generation, but I do feel like there is going to be a very significant switch when it comes to money.
Away from the kind of money
Away from the, yeah, yes.
exchange and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Interesting.
think, but I don't feel like it's going to be in my lifetime or my kids' lifetime or even in their kids' lifetime. I
Yeah,
actually
but
feel like
eventually.
it's,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Because you have to think, like, I know money's been around for a long time, but like, you know, but certainly like in different societies at different times, it's been much more like an exchange of barter, like I do this,
yeah.
you do
And
this.
but it's evolved, right? It's constant.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's more community based, and there's not so much like hierarchy involved. That's something that's been coming through to me a lot. It's about like the hierarchy is like it just doesn't it doesn't make sense for us anymore. I think a lot of us don't value it anymore.
And
Yeah,
yeah, that's a hierarchy. I feel like is just such an earth.
it is such an earth thing, but it's not where we're going. The hierarchy is going to be let go, but like we're seeing the rumblings like right now, right? Like
yeah.
I keep hearing, like when I'm doing higher self readings, I keep hearing messages about like this is probably for most of us one of the most difficult incarnations, right? Like the difficult missions. I know there's a lot of like terrible stuff that has happened in, previous lifetimes, probably, right? Like it's certainly, we've lived through, you would think, more difficult times, but I think the thing is that now our consciousness is really, it's higher than it used to be, right? So there's more of an awareness of like the need for humane kind of treatment and things like that, right? And so it is more difficult because our society and how things are still is based on that old level of consciousness, but we are not.
No.
Whereas before, like it was more like our conscious, like we might have lived in really like bloody times, right? Like I'm sure, but the consciousness level that we have now, the awareness was not there.
No.
That's why it's difficult in this one, because I feel almost like I get goosebumps as I say this, but I feel as if our consciousness is now like it's higher than it's ever been, and but the earth, the material plane, has not caught up to it. That's what I keep
that resonates for sure.
Yeah, it hasn't caught up, so that's why there's so much dissonance right now.
Organization
it's
and
just chaos. It's just because it hasn't caught up. But
that makes sense.
It will, but we also have to be the ones to do it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's.
I'm going to read my card in a sec, but this whole conversation is making me think of a quote that I heard from Terence McKenna, who was very like philosophical and did a lot of LSD and mushrooms, psychedelics. And I think there's a quote where he had this like psychedelic experience and he's talking to the mushroom and he's saying, why Earth? Like, why here?
Of all places.
Of all places. And the mushroom says, because the rent's cheaper.
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay, so the card, on that note, the card that I pulled is the Mentor. I really like this. This is interesting. Okay, so it says teacher, the sage, the guru. It is said that and this is from the Wild Unknown archetype. So this was also shout out to Ida. This was gifted me by her. Ida does our podcast intro. She did our music. And so this card says, it is said that cosmic knowledge pours down on the world like a great illuminated waterfall. This can be an overwhelming force. The true teacher, though, is said to be able to hold this flow of wisdom at bay while the student sips from a focused stream. The mentor archetype has a gift for reading the room, for sensing the exact ingredient that will stimulate growth within the student, whether pleasant or painful. The mentor may appear aloof or available, harsh or tender, humorous or rigid. Their gift is to know what serves the soul. Ultimately, the mentor is in service of the greater cosmic good and aids in the elevation of consciousness. Anytime the mentor forgets this humble link and mistakes themselves for the source of enlightenment, the archetype falls into shadow. So it says like focused, clear, bright, being a student, going deeper. So a lot of, I feel like learning is happening right now, talking about consciousness. We're also talking about things that I feel like are very kind of like LSD, psychedelic. I feel like this is
both of these cards speak to that
out there
Yeah.
very it's not a new concept, but I think we're seeing some change with it, and I think we're seeing like everything, we always grow and we evolve, and so I feel like we're coming out of that fear, not just around obviously psychedelics. That's very much, I feel like, a metaphor for the bigger picture here. But I think we're coming out of that fear. And I think just like you said, Amy, like there's a big shift happening. There's things that have not caught up to the elevated consciousness. And so I feel like this is huge and all about just learning. We're learning to go with it and being that mentor.
What did you say in there? There's something you said that really hit. It was about something goes into the shadow. What did you say? If the person...
I said, if anytime the mentor forgets this humble link, so the link about the service being the mentor being the service of greater good.
Yes.
Anytime they forget that, or they mistake themselves for the source of enlightenment.
That's what hit me, because I feel like that's what the hierarchy is based on. It's about somebody almost having like a God complex,
absolutely,
savior complex, right?
Yes.
So it's been abused. It's a misabuse of the power.
Yes.
Like it's an abuse of the leadership. Right?
Absolutely.
So that as you said it, I was like, oh, I got chills. And so I wanted you to go back and say it again, because I feel like that's what the hierarchy is about.
Yeah.
And it's about getting back to being of service and being humble.
Abuse and power, or just like there's also, boy, maybe I'm going to get off topic now, but I was watching, we were watching the news this morning, because Alex and I are an old married couple, but we were watching the news this morning, and we literally saw all the premiers, and I was like, wow, look how white.
How old and white.
Old and white and male. And, I just, if we ever want to see change in society, we need to have more representation from, we just need to have more representation.
Younger generations, I feel, as well as different cultures and perspectives of people, women and non-binary people, and so many different perspectives and so much wisdom that could come from
communities.
I was going to say of community. That's what you see in politics and even in like big business is not community. It's a hierarchy.
Like, we want people that can represent the people. And how are we supposed to change and grow if there's those people are not being represented?
Because it's very hard for, like, if you don't have the ability to relate or understand what somebody's going through, then how can you represent them like authentically? You can't. When it comes down, I know everybody can maybe have differing views on what's happening in the States with Roe versus Wade, but like, honestly, how can the people that made that decision make that decision? I feel like most of them were men.
That's the reality of it, right? Like
you're not a woman. Like, you have no idea. So how can you even be put in the position of power to make the decision?
That's what make the decision about your own body.
Not with integrity and authenticity. Like, no, you can't.
Nope.
What's that quote by Brene Brown that's like, in order to fully, like,
I don't know.
Something like, in order to fully see something, or in order to fully have compassion or understanding of somebody else, you have to you have to basically understand how they feel, not based on like what you think they should feel or like what
it's
you
like
would feel, right?
Walking in their shoes times 100.
Yes.
Like it's,
yes.
you know.
Yeah, I butchered that. In the next episode, I will give you the quote. But it's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, we got a little bit political and out there. Yeah. We went way off topic from
off topic, Clairvoyance.
This was a very long episode, but we've also heard from you that you guys like long episodes. So
yes. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
If you like what you're hearing, don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and tune in each week as we dish on all things spiritual.
Don't forget to like, comment on what you would like to hear us talk about next, and subscribe.